My name is Heba Bouchneef. I'm the Director of Research and Data at the Arab Foundations Forum. And on behalf of the AFF team, I'd like to welcome you to the webinar on advancing collaboratives and partnerships. So today we're here to discuss the report findings of the Advancing Collaboratives and Partnerships workshop. This is an initiative that took place almost a year ago. This is the product of the initiative that started a year ago. Our starting point was, we could see this growing visibility of partnerships, practice of partnerships in the philanthropic sector and the nonprofit sector. It's in our conversations, in the literature, but less is known about the dynamics of partnership, what makes partnerships work, and also how the ecosystem can advance partnerships. So there's this knowledge gap that we wanted to address at AFF. And so we decided to take action. So we talked to our members as a membership network in the Arab region. The first point of conversation or contact, we discussed with my members, and we felt a lot of enthusiasm. Yes, this is an important issue. We'd like to learn more about it. So we thought about having a workshop that would specifically discuss how to advance philanthropic partnerships and collaboratives. We reached out to the Abdullah Saleh Kamel Foundation, and they were very enthusiastic, and they came on board at first instance. And we also started having these conversations, so one-to-one conversations with our partners and members in the network to see what their views are about philanthropic partnerships, the experience they have in partnerships. And we had these really rich discussions that culminated in 7 case studies. So 7 of these organizations, 8 of these organizations that we talked to came on board and suggested that they would share their experience in this workshop. So we held this workshop in September of last year, 2023, and it was attended by 40 organizations in the region. It was a very rich discussion. After the workshop, kind of, from the start of, discussing with these partners, there was kind of a snowball effect. So we got suggestions, so why don't you document these findings because of the rich discussion, which we actually did. So a task force was set up with several members who are represented here now, and we will present them. Leading the development of the report was the Sawiris Foundation team, Adam Hamdi and Patricia Salman, who will be also presenting the report. And so we started with the writing and the development, and now we are going to talk about the report review and share the findings. And we know, and we have to assume that you being here means that you probably agree with the notion that advancing partnerships and collaboration is important to varying degrees, of course. And there's probably some interest in this topic. But what we're really here today is to discuss a more, bigger issue or a harder question, which is the how. So we've had conversations in the task force about how can we advance philanthropic partnerships, and there's not really one strict, clear pathway, but there's different ways and we can do it. So we're really here to ask you, share with you the report findings, and ask you to contemplate with us how or what can we do as organizations and as a collective to advance philanthropic partnerships and to strengthen the ecosystem for partnerships. So I invite you to kind of, reflect on this question as we present the findings of the report so we can have this discussion together. So with us today, joining us in this effort is an amazing group that we have been working with from the onset. From the beginning of this journey, Ayman Shahata has been on board. So Ayman is a lead consultant in the Impact Investing Initiative. And Ayman might want to tell us a little bit about this initiative. We have the Sawiris Foundation team on board with us, Adam Hamdi, who is a senior officer for learning and innovation, and Patricia Shaman, who is a strategy officer, and they have been instrumental in going from A to Z in this report writing and in thinking and the thought process in the task force. We have also joined by amazing members here, AFF members, which I will list alphabetically. Ghofrana Budaya, she is the MENA Regional Coordinator for Catalyst 2030. Mona Abbas, who is the CEO of Sawiris Foundation, and Osama Al-Hanaki, who is the Director of Policy, Design and Advocacy at KKF. So we will be discussing the research findings and hearing from you your feedback. I'll start with my part. So, I hope you can see it clearly. Somebody give me a thumbs up. Great, wonderful. So that's a technical glitch. I'll just do something else. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to share this screen format. So one of the important issues that we talked about in the workshop was the issue of trust. So trust doesn't really get the deserve that the discussion about trust doesn't really get the attention that it needs because it's a systemic issue. So we can see from surveys, there's evidence that trust in institutions sometimes is low, but also interpersonal trust as societies. So this is an issue that that's not only in the Middle East and Arab region, but also in developing countries at large. But it manifests itself in terms of, on the institution level. So there could be some, lack of trust, whether in civil society or across sectors. But the experiences that we talked about in the workshop, they are tackling this issue heads on through equal footing partnerships, whether so they're dismantling kind of these, the grantor-grantee kind of partnerships with more democratized formats, whether it's intra-sector, inter-philanthropy, or inter-philanthropy. We're also seeing trust building in the funding of social innovation and risk-taking in social enterprises, whether also in civil society organizations. So this investment in an idea or a community-inspired idea that it has not been implemented before, or it has risk-taking elements. So that is a manifestation of trust. Another manifestation of trust that we talked about is knowledge co-creation. So this is really trusting the communities or civil society with their know-how and giving them the space and the platform to co-create this knowledge, knowing that they know their needs much better. We also talked about the trust building mechanisms. So some of the recommendations that came out from the workshop was the necessity of convening intra and inter-philanthropy dialogue, so within the sector and across sectors. And some pointed to the regularity of these convenings. It's important to have these regular convenings take place, kind of this in a systematic approach. We also discussed, or in the report, you find programs that have a built-in component to address this trust or lack of trust issue. So building trust. We have the example of the Tabadul program for Sawiris Foundation, where they bring a social enterprise or profit-making entity and host it in a civil society organization. So you have a profit-making enterprise in a community, and from their assessments, they find this assessments of the results of this program. They have found this community and trust level building. And also another programmatic approach that we shared in the workshop and in the report is the League of Arab States. So the League of Arab States is a intergovernmental body of Arab countries. And they wanted to see more collaboration between the philanthropic sector and governments. But there was little clarity of what each, specifically of philanthropy, was doing. So over a 2-year program, we convened philanthropy. So I was working on this project. They convened philanthropy and government to discuss, what each sector was doing in sustainable development, and kind of to understand what are the obstacles and the operational challenges, the enabling environment challenges that the philanthropic sector is facing. And this project actually culminated into a set of guidelines, voluntary guidelines that would advance philanthropy and government partnerships. So this is more of a programmatic approach where you're at the beginning tackling this issue of trust. We also discussed in the report trust-based philanthropic practices that you can see in the report, such as long-term investments in civil society capacity building, multi-year funding, and investment in core funding. So these are some of the practices that were highlighted and discussed in the meeting. Another area that we discussed was the need for dedicated platforms. So platforms that would specifically focus on connecting and networking the diverse actors, not just in the sector, but with multi-stakeholder kind of connectivity. These platforms would play an instrumental role in aligning and coordinating and partnership building, but also in the knowledge sharing aspect. And exchange of learning and experiences. That was also seen as being important. The role of also platforms in overcoming fragmentation. So you find different platforms maybe playing the same role, or there's some overlap. So some of the advice that was given by the participants and that are documented in the report is to create democratized platforms with equal footing representation. And I think maybe an example, AFF would be a good example here. So we started off as a platform for philanthropic organizations, but we opened up our membership to nonprofit organizations, the wider social investing sector, and also individuals. So that's an evolution, but in the direction of democratization. They also talked about really focused networking opportunities around specific topics or specific areas, and opening evidence-based dialogues. This was another important issue that was raised, or recommendation, and the connectivity between existing platforms and networks. So to address this issue of fragmentation that we talked about, it was really deemed necessary that the different platforms working in this ecosystem should be connected through, common activities or objectives or interventions. The other issue that was discussed is governance. So during the discussions, there was a lot of emphasis about many practices going into the direction of this, or partnerships being more dominated, or there's a concentration of the agenda setting power or the rule setting power, and that this would really hamper this long-term sustainability of a partnership, having this concentration of power, and that the spelling out of the responsibilities and the rights of partners is not always clear at the outset. So these are the issues that were kind of flagged in the meeting, and we'll have Osama will be commenting more in depth about this topic. So the advice for this governance challenge was, or the concentration of power, is to have shared leadership and ownership, the co-design of rules and framework setting. So just like this process that we started in this writing this report, it's really an example of co-designing. So there is this decentralized way of sharing and contributing with our knowledge and working together, setting the rules. And the third point that they talked about is the transparency in decision-making. So not just internally in terms of the partnership, but also what this transparent decision-making that would advance accountability to stakeholders. So these are the issues that we discussed, and there's more to be shared by Adham Hamdi. If you want to, please go ahead, Adham, and talk a little bit about the data and evidence.
Thank you, Heba. If I could get back one slide, I wanted to emphasize on transparency a bit, since transparency can also involve the transparency of decision-making, who decides what in the project, how do you decide to fund a project, and the practices of evaluating a proposal or a project is very important in philanthropy and in funding in general. Transparency can often be overlooked in partnerships, and it's a make it or break it factor, because on another hand, transparency towards stakeholders, individuals or corporations that fund the initiative, or even the beneficiaries that received the initiative, all creates a better ecosystem of trust, the points you previously talked about. So I feel transparency is such a very crucial partnership aspect that is in this sector is very important. Another aspect of it is data. A lot of data within philanthropic actors and their interventions is being kept within the circles of action or the circles of work. However, for us stakeholders that are interested in such practices, we need to also be aware of this data, and that would bridge a lot of the knowledge gaps that will be there. So a lot of philanthropic specialists and a lot of academia in the region highlights how little data we have on the different interventions, the needs, the challenges, and what can be done about them. Organizations working on a given intervention don't necessarily see the other potential partners that could be working on the same thing. And I think Mona Abbas would also comment here on this point, as she mentioned it in our previous meetings. With regards to transparency, a very great example was provided by the Ata Fund. The Ata Fund pools resources from everywhere and also uses innovative reporting channels to disclose how they spent these resources. As for data and evidence, at Sawiris Foundation, we have a very successful model of sort of marriage between funding and science. However, I leave that to my colleague Patricia. She will take you through the strategic funding and how that is married to data. Thank you, Heba. Over to Patricia.
Thank you, Adham, and good afternoon, everyone. Heba, can we just go one slide, the next one? Yeah. Thank you. So I want to focus more on a different kind of partnerships and a different kind of collaboration that's more focused on how can we include beneficiaries and how can we include implementing partners in co-creating knowledge. So during the workshop, we got insights that a lot of times we tend to take developmental models from the outside and try to implement them in our context and realize that they don't work. And a lot of time it's because we live in a very different culture and our social norms are very different as Arab countries. So from here came the importance of being context relevant and being responsive to the context and to the culture that we're in. And this can be done by co-creating knowledge with the communities. So I want to talk a little bit about an example that Scott Cameron had shared during the workshop, and that's Ahlan Simsim. So I don't know if you're all familiar with it, but it's basically the Sesame Street, which was implemented in the Arab region. And what they did here is that they wanted the Syrian and the Jordanian and the Arab community to relate to the content that they created. So what they did is conduct needs assessment, look at their challenges, look at the community's needs, testing the content with family. And this allowed every little girl that was watching the cartoon to really relate to that character, to really relate to the barriers that she was facing. And so the educational goals of Ahlan Simsim really went through, and they were really well received because all of the children were able to relate to that. So this is an example of co-creating knowledge with beneficiaries, but we can also co-create knowledge with our implementing partners. So as Philanthropic and at Sawiris Foundation, we deal a lot with implementing partners firsthand. And what we try to do is we try to involve them in the design of the intervention and the design of the project. So we go with them with the knowledge of, hey, we think this could work. So let's sit together and think of how can we develop your proposal further? How can we share with you the knowledge, but we also want to hear from you what works on the ground. What does your community need? What are the challenges that they're facing? And how can we come up with a solution that would be viable for them? So they give us this on-the-ground insight, and we kind of try to come with the knowledge and the research, which we do as a learning and strategy department. And also, it's our responsibility to communicate this knowledge. So as Philanthropies and as Sawiris Foundation, we are very interested in looking into locally sourced knowledge. And no, we're still in the one above. Sorry, it's the last point. So yeah, communicating and disseminating this knowledge, not only to each other, so through the platform and through things like this webinar, newsletter, blogs, trying to share our experiences and share our learnings, but also to our NGOs. So as I said, an example would be a proposal development workshops where we can sit with them and kind of share the insights. And also we can look for similar context. So for example, we work with an Indian NGO and an NGO from Bangladesh, so BRAC and Pratham, and it's a South-to-South collaboration, which makes it very relevant for us because we kind of have similar demographics, or we kind of have similar culture or social norms. So they had a model that was rigorously evaluated, and we saw that this would have much more potential than something that would be imported from the West or from a culture that is different than us. And what we did is we took that model and we contextualized it to the Egyptian context, and it's actually being implemented and evaluated as we speak. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. So how can we institutionalize this problem of funding? How can we put it in our channels? How can it direct our funds? So I want to just take a step back and let us think, how do we direct our funds? So I know there's a lot of foundations present in the room. There's a lot of donor entities. So I just want us to think of based on what do we make the decision of we should fund this program and not that one, we should direct our funds to this intervention and not the other one. So there's a lot of criteria, and I believe that each of us have their own rubrics and their own criteria. I think a very common one is that we all want to be aligned with the SDGs, with global goals, or even with our national strategies. So all of these are important criterias, but what we want to raise your attention to, and something that was also raised in the report and in the workshop, is that we need to start funding what works. And what that means is that we want to try to find evidence-based interventions and evidence-based projects that were rigorously evaluated in other countries and take them to our context and contextualize them. So it's basically like any kind of investment that we make, we always want to know what will be the return of investment, what will I gain from this, what will the society gain from this, and more often than not, we want evidence to be guiding these decisions. But we have a problem, I think, in the Arab countries, that there is not a lot of data available, or there is a lack of data in the Middle East in general. So something that we encourage as Sawiris Foundation is to, if we don't know what works, then we need to invest in finding out what works. And one of the tools in doing this is to impact evaluate the interventions. And that is very important, not only for learning, but also for our strategies, because this is what guides our strategic directions. At the end of the day, our M&E efforts are what guides what we should fund and what we should be focusing on. And of course, it costs a lot, RCTs and differences and collecting data. It's very, very costly, and it's very time consuming, but it's also very necessary. So I think that a very important finding and encouragement would be to invest as philanthropies in generating this data and supporting evidence-based practices and interventions. Because at the end of the day, these results and these findings is what really allows us to say, okay, this works, let's expand, let's cover more households, or okay, this does not work, evaluations have showed that this is not significant, so maybe we should pause and fund other projects. So I'm just going to give one example of how we do this at the Sawiris Foundation. We have 2 different tracks of funding. We can move to the next slide. We can move. Can we just go to the last slide? Yeah, thank you. So we have 2 different kinds of funding. The track B is basically funding evidence-based practices. So if an NGO comes with an intervention that has a lot of data, that has a lot of evidence, and that was proven to work, then we give a large sum of money to that program. But if there is lack of data, and if they still want to, they still need funding for a specific project, then we sit with them and we design an evaluation, and we partner with research houses such as JPAL, such as IFPRI or ERF, any research house that would be in the region, and we design an evaluation. We take affiliated professors and we conduct an impact evaluation on this so that we can expand and invest more in it. So that was it on my end. I'll give the floor back to Adham to tell us about the stakeholder map.
Thank you, Patty. And if I can excuse Heba to show us the stakeholders map. Great. So one of the main outputs of the workshop was this map in front of you. This is the stakeholders map, or a draft 1 of the stakeholders map for Arab philanthropy. And as you can see in green, and I really hope you can see the tiny text of foundations and non-profit organizations. This major category has under it several other categories of of funders, we can say, that range between public and independent philanthropic organizations, venture philanthropy, family foundations, royal foundations, sometimes even CSR arms. We put them here, categorized with the funders. Also, we try to capture catalyzers or platforms and networks, as you can see in red or in orange. Those catalyzers or enablers of the action, so bridge the knowledge gaps, bridge the evidence gaps between the different players by being specialists in communicating philanthropic relevant evidence in the region. One of the great examples of this is Philanthropy Age's Circle MENA. CircleMENA.org has a very nice directory and resources on philanthropy and philanthropic practices. They even developed the Circle Index, which is sort of like a phone book for all philanthropic actors and serves partly the same function as this map. However, we thought from the workshop and that it's very important to, as a beginning, have a map of who does what or who is under which category. This starting point will enable us to navigate forward the different relationships between the different actors. It will also allow for Arab philanthropists to sort of have an overview on who is there, who is doing what in philanthropy as well. Hopefully, why we are showing this to you today and what we hope this map would be impactful in is that the next step, we will try to identify relationships that exist on this map between the different actors, and we will try to identify what relationships or what different aspects of partnerships need to be established between which types of partners. So we think this map is a good starting point. However, we would like the participants to engage with it. We don't want this as a dead image. We want this to be an ever-evolving map that always updates what's happening in Arab philanthropy. So for us to be able to do that in the best way, we will need to collect data from you. And hence, we really want to point towards the Arab Philanthropy Survey that the AFF circulated. The survey will serve as the input for this map, and it will serve as the input to understand the ecosystem better, who helps with what are the types of relationships that exist between the different stakeholders and what they do. So if you want to see a full image size of this map, you can click on the link you find in the bottom left corner, or you can see it in the report when it's out. However, anyhow, this map, we always need to come back to it to sort of have an ecosystem or a systematic view of Arab philanthropy. I'll stop here and give the floor back to Hiba or Ayman. And can't wait to hear from all of you. Can't wait to talk together and conduct a conversation on this. Hiba, over to you.
Thank you, Adham. Thank you, Patty, so much. We've actually posted in the chat this survey link. If you can please just take a look at it. We have 5 minutes to fill in the survey where we're asking the questions that Adham just shared with you. Where does your organization lie in this kind of subsector? What role can it play in advancing philanthropic partnerships? So you'll find the link in the chat, and if you can kindly fill it, that would be very helpful. I'd also like to, Ayman, I'll give the floor to you as the co-facilitator. You can take it from here.
Thank you, Hiba. And while people are trying to fill in the survey, I will just have a few questions before moving forward. And also, we are having a question from Rania at the Q&A. Hiba, Do we have literature about collaboration between in the philanthropy sector in the Arab region or at large? Do we have literatures regarding this issue?
Not extensively, no in-depth studies. So I think this study could be the first that really talks about collaboratives and partnerships in the sector. But we'll find there's lots of resources on the global level about advancing partnerships. Candid, the European Council on Foundations, they have a big body of knowledge, but I think we are just starting in our region to document these practices. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Osama, Muna, Ghufran, Adham, and Patricia.
Amazing. And this document would be available to the public, right?
Yes, we are going to be uploading the report on our website and sharing it with the participants after the workshop.
Amazing.
And I think Walid also will be sharing a link right now, and as we talk in the webinar, Walid will be sharing a link to the report.
Okay. Then, Heba, I remember that while we were preparing for this workshop, the intentions were that we take what kind of action can we take to take collaboration and partnership one step forward. So I will move with this question to Adham and ask him for this beautiful typology of philanthropic system actors, how you think this can help? How can we put it one step further through this? How this can help you?
Thank you very much, Ayman, for asking. When I look at this map, I see an ecosystem of different organizations. This kind of logic is imported from biology, from ecology and conservation, sort of. I see different organisms that could have beneficial relationships that vary. It can be funding, it can be science, it can be know-how, and it can be simply support with the implementation or circulation of dissemination, or it can be even scientific support with evaluation. What I would love to see as a version 2 of this map is that type of relation. I want to see that organization is working with this organization in a scientific collaborative. I would like to see we are missing collaboratives of that or that type. I'd like to see that.
Okay, and how do you think we can take this forward with the public, with the rest of the audience that we are having now? How me as a participant can contribute to this one and take it forward and utilize it?
If I'm a participant that I exist on this map already, I would look for synergies with other partners from this map. If I'm not on this map, I would love to be on it for others to see me as well. What do I do? And from this map, I can navigate to the organization that I want to work with, knowing that they already work in this and that sector. And this information, as simple as it is, the fact that it's not there is making us lose a lot of potential of partnerships and collaborations in the region.
Amazing. And by filling the survey, my organization would be inside this map?
Yes, inside the next version of this map will not stop here. There will be other versions of this map constantly updated to reflect the ecosystem of Arab philanthropy.
Amazing. Thank you, Adham. And I think this is a beautiful start of mapping the ecosystem. As a development practitioner, the first thing I look for is the landscape. Who is doing what and how we can collaborate with that. So having an initial map of the ecosystem, I think it is a simple but huge starting point if we can build on, and we can move from the map into interaction. So I think these are questions that we need to think of with our audience of how to take this one step forward, how to enhance the map and how to enhance the interactions out of the map. Then I'll have the last question to Patricia before moving to our commentators. Patricia, we are having a question from Rania asking about data, about the data. Can you check?
Yeah. So I answered I don't know if my answers appear, but I answered on the chat already.
Can you tell us more?
Yeah. So what we were referring to is the data that shows us the impact, which goes way beyond the data that a lot of us used to look at. Okay, is the NGO implementing what she said she would do? But it's more about the outcomes and the changes that this has on society and on the beneficiaries. So based on these findings and based on these evaluations, we can decide where we want to direct our funds. So I hope this answers the question.
I have another question concerning evaluation and data. If I'm a small organization and I don't have funds to do this kind of intensive surveying about what works and what doesn't work, I have a little budget from philanthropists that they want to see all the money going to poor people, not through validation process. They want just the money go to the poor. Do we have something that we can tap on the knowledge some organizations like Sawiris and others have, and tapping on where are the return on investment, the social return on investment is the highest, and then we can help in that? Is there sort of mapping of what works and what doesn't work, so that I don't have to do this kind of investment? Is this valid?
Yeah, of course. So I think that this is what our track B answers most. So what really costs a lot of money is, and a lot of resources, is the track A, because you have to generate data and you have to start from scratch and design an entire evaluation and collect the data and analyze it. So this is what would take a lot of effort and a lot of resources. So my advice for these smaller organizations would be to try to look at the evidence that already exists and try to replicate this into their context. So there's no need to generate more evidence if you don't have the resources. You can definitely use what already exists, and we can maybe send links later on where we can find these.
Thank you, Patricia. Heba, as a co-facilitator, you can always jump in responding to the chat and the questions, especially the ones who are asking about link to this. I think just fill in the survey, and I believe the whole report and the link would be available, but just fill in the survey.
Ayman, I just wanted to answer the two questions quickly in the chat. The Q&A, sorry. They were asking about data mappings. Are they available? So there are some efforts to document who's doing where and what. So we have the Circle MENA, for example, the Circle Index. They have a database of organizations listed by sector intervention, the governance, geographic focus. At the Arab Foundations Forum, we have the Arab Philanthropy Survey, which is a very in-depth survey of the sector. We have launched in 2020, and we have a revised kind of tool that we have sharing with our members and the network. So, but this, of course, is subject to the kind of commitment and also the culture of sharing data. So the most the data that's really hard to find is data on investments. So you find, yes, we can find things about geography, the sectors, and in a more kind of centralized way, but how much is being invested in the sector, who's investing in it? This it's very hard to find on in a comprehensive manner. But hopefully, we're working on filling in this gap as AFF.
Thank you, Heba, and thank you for the whole dissemination of knowledge act that you and led by Sawiris Foundation partner in this helped us in getting us educated about what's happening and what are the different elements that can help pushing forward the partnerships and creating more synergy. With this knowledge in mind, now I think we need to move forward to what kind of actions we can build on this, what kind of call for action that can help this taking this forward. And this question for all of us, all the 40 participants, what kind of action you think you can be part of? What kind of interventions we can build on this to take collaboration forward and take synergy forward in a time that the challenges are very hard and the resources are not that abundant, and the gap, for example, for the SDGs is getting widening. So what kind of realistic interventions that we can start with and grow with? Instead of having a big vision of collaboration, we already are having a good study showing us the different elements, but now what kind of intervention that we can start, what kind of realistic, ambitious though realistic. And I would need to start with Osama El-Henaki from King Khalid Foundation, and starting with us as foundation, Osama. We as foundation, how can we internalize these kind of values and elements of collaboration within our foundations before going outside and start to collaborate? What kind of matrix, checklist, what kind of DNA necessary for an organization to be more compatible for collaboration?
Thank you, Ayman. And indeed, as you said, it's about the DNA of the organization being more accepting and willing, and actually strategically putting collaboration partnership as a North Pole. It also starts within organizations, as you mentioned. It's a culture, and to build cultures, you need people to believe in the idea, and incentive systems within organizations are designed to push that kind of behavior. Sometimes us foundations, we have problems of working in silos, not between foundations themselves, but sometimes between teams within foundations. So increasing the ability to consider the added value of working in collaboration would be a necessity. And I think any kind of big ambition to make this ecosystem move as a huge Arab ambition of collaboration is not going to happen unless we internalize the culture to our strategies and organizational structures and our behaviors and beliefs as executives and employees of nonprofits. Another issue I think we should consider is the power dynamics between us and other organizations, locally and regionally, especially grant-making foundations like us, being always considerate of the relationship between grant maker and a grantee, because a lot of the problems around working in silos and coming from a more lecturing position comes from where money is held, and that relationship between grant makers and grantees need to be repurposed and looked at differently. I'm a big fan of calling grantees partners. They're not grantees, they're actually your partners. You need them as much as they need you, and co-designing and working together and collaborating is it's not about you having a bid or a contract you're giving to a vendor. It's actually you coming together, understanding the local needs and responding to them collaboratively and effectively. And also it's about the value of shared leadership. Are we willing to give up some of our control, some of our decision making to those partners who we are trying to be collaborating with? Because sometimes we would like to see collaboration, but we would like to maintain control, and we would like to tell them what to do, and we're not willing to co-design because we know what's best. So that would lead to no collaboration at all, because it's the way you're looking at your partners is the problem. And for me, I'm more of a realist. I know where we are as a community of foundations in the Arab world when it comes to collaboration. We're a bit far behind, and this is why we're here today. Discussing this and doing a reality check is important. For me, I don't see a value in us getting carried away and so excited about the idea of collaborating that we can jump into big ideas and big asks. The idea that somehow we can convince foundations or organizations in the Arab world to come up with $100 billion pooled fund is unrealistic. I think it's counterintuitive. It does not help to think in that kind of big collaborations, because it's not possible to go to pooled funding if you're not doing the smaller steps of collaboration that enhance this trust and the relationship between us as organizations. So I'm more of a fan of a stepwise, incremental culture of collaboration within organizations and across organizations. This means we can start working with existing networks like the Arab Foundations Forum. It means we can, instead of putting resources together, we can put ideas and knowledge together. So this is less liability, financial and administrative, less resources required from everyone, but more attitude. That's the attitudinal change we need to start looking at. And I think a beautiful way to start working together is to commit together, is to pledge together. Pledges are a nice way of saying we have the same vision, we have the same intention. Maybe we're not ready yet to open a bank account together, we're not ready to start a joint venture, but we have a vision that we're willing to put our resources towards. And I think a good example of that is the Arab Foundation's Pledge for Climate Finance, which was recently launched by AFF. And it's not saying let's do a collaboration around climate action. It's saying let's at least think about pledging together and committing together to work towards this kind of solution. I'm also a fan of less structured and more flexible forms of collaboration, because it's also trust building. For example, in Saudi Arabia, we're trying something called the Foundations Roundtable. So it's not a network, it's not a coalition, it's not an alliance, it's not anything structured, it's just a roundtable. Let's get together every Ramadan, let's have breakfast together, and let's start discussing possible ways of collaboration. So making the entry barrier less and the requirements needed and liabilities less is very important to get things moving. And you will start to see some pushback, you'll start to see some questioning around the validity or the viability of these solutions, but it takes time to build that narrative and that culture with your organizations. And from what we saw in Saudi Arabia, we still have a lot of hiccups working together as collaboration, as foundations. But to start with the roundtable, I think now we've had 6 or 7 roundtables, CEO level meetings between big foundations. Some of them never worked or connected or talked together. For example, diverse organizations like royal foundations, private foundations, corporate foundations, awqaf, coming together and having a conversation, and then trying to find that common project, that small step, that incremental change we can do together. Thank you.
It's too much to digest, ya Osama. It's too much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we need to build a culture at the very beginning within our organization, and we need to take care of the power dynamics, because I can give some autonomy. Sometimes I give autonomy to the grantees, but within the design framework I'm having, so it is moderated autonomy, not a real autonomy. So I'm talking here about some risk-taking in giving trust to people I'm working with. And in this process itself is an empowering process, regardless of how they are going to deliver. But then you ended this beautiful elements with that you are realists, and you don't think of the big bowling fund, you are thinking of small steps. Okay, And so I'll move to Mona, but I will give some questions to the rest of the audience and Ghufran and Patricia and Adham before moving to Mona. So Osama gave us a framework and homework that we don't have to deal with money, but we can deal with ideas and knowledge sharing instead of money sharing. And we don't have to move in a very structured way, but we can move in a more agile structure. And we can sort of pledge together something and work on that and have sort of benchmark and meet every once in a while and see how we are progressing into this. So he's helping us with a lot of ideas to how to move forward, which is what we want to do in the coming to the rest of this session, and also to the rest of the coming AFF conference. So during this year, AFF helped us, gave us a platform for collaboration and asked us to come together and think of what we want to do and how we can take this forward and how can we dream. In spite of this dream, Osama is asking us to be realists. And I'm asking Mona to be a dreamer versus Osama, and tell us, as a dreamer organization and person leading this Sawiris Foundation, Mona, how can you start with a dream as an organization that can build on collaboration? Here and now, with your own resources, how can you start a dream?
Thank you, Ayman, and marhaba everyone, and nice to be with you here. And congratulations for for arranging this workshop today, and for the report and sharing the findings. And thanks for the Sawiris Foundation for working on this research, and for the Arab Foundation Forum for providing this important platform. يعني I don't want to say I'm the radical dreamer. خلينا أقول يعني I'm happy to be, but I think there are a lot of practical things that we can do and take the initiative to make things happen and to collaborate and to reach out for each other. أول شيء, the first thing, it's this mapping that was presented. I think it's very valuable. And the great thing about it, it's that it's going to be a living document where it will be always updated and refreshed. So we can at least, if I want to reach to other organizations, I know at least I have the address. I know where to go, who to call, and what do they do, and which time to talk to them, and about what opportunity. But I think there is a lot of responsibility that is lying on our side, which I mean the grant-making organizations. Usually those who are working on the ground, they collaborate, because if they work in one city or one village or in the same sector, there are thematic and geographical platforms for coordination. I know that they can be competing sometimes, because it can be very competitive over funding and so on, but they have to collaborate when they work on the ground. But the grant-making organizations, we need to acknowledge that we have a lot of power. The power of basically holding the money, and money is an essential and important factor. We have also the perspective that we have multiple partners who may not know each other, but we know them. So we have the overview. So we know we have a wider overview. Some of us are based outside the region. Some of us are based in very important countries in the region. So we have that kind of, I call them privileges. These are privileges that we need to dedicate for our mission. I can give examples like the Sawiris Foundation. The type of grants we're giving are very flexible institutional capacity, and basically the investment in the infrastructure of the civil society and the charities and organizations. We do not focus on basically the deliverables or project-based funding rather than strategic and flexible funding. And with this kind of funding, we can match other fundings that given by other grant makers that are more focused on programs. So if one of the funders are giving a very specific education fund or economic empowerment fund, whatever the sector is, and if this investment aligns with our goals and our strategy, which is, I'm sure there are a lot of intersections here, what we provide for the foundation or for the implementing or the grantees is a flexible fund where they can build their capacity to implement other projects that they're getting from. So we're happy to collaborate with any funders who are trying to invest with civil society organizations in the region. And our focus is basically in the 4 countries in the Levant, the Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Jordan. That's our geographical focus. And we give this flexible fund. I think that's an area or a window where we are happy to collaborate with donors in the region and philanthropists in the region to collaborate together. The other thing is, for example, at this time of the year, many of or even in the last quarter of last year, a lot of grant-making organizations are releasing their calls for proposals, and they're looking for new partners to release their funding. I don't know if we are talking to each other. Are we designing these calls together? So at least we know what is going to be out there, how much money we are investing. You're talking about how much money we're collecting, data about investment. Usually people or organizations, they don't share that. It's good sometimes if we don't need to be 10 or 20 philanthropists sitting in one room. It can be, we can take an initiative of 2 or 3 who are, for example, investing in one country in a certain sector. Let's come together and try to align. It's not a pool fund, as Osama suggested. It doesn't need to be pool fund. I agree with that. But we can align. We can see what kind of proposals are we getting, share the resources, the information, and maybe we can support local civil society to build consortiums and to work together in collaboration. It doesn't need to be one bank account. It doesn't need to be one framework. It can be one framework. That's a great target, to have a joint framework where multiple donors can fill in and multiple partners can fill in, and have a thematic or a programmatic framework. That can be ideal, and it's not impossible. It's doable. It's our time, and it's our teams who can work together. And I think that's a very good example. Another example is that we're sometimes approached by local organizations who are asked by their donors to bring a match funding. And we are happy to do that. We've done this before, and we're happy to do this. If this funding is really critical, we see the added value, and the match funding will support this local organization to get a larger amount of fund to implement a program that we think is ambitious and something that we can achieve a larger impact through that. This is another example of collaborating. And we don't need always to wait till we are approached by one of our partners. We also reach out for other donors, and they can be philanthropists, they can be institutional donors, they can be private sector, they can be from out the region, like USAID, EU, other instruments for different aid agencies who are interested in the region. Let's have a look at what they have What are their plans? What are their strategies? And who are their partners? And we can step in. Yeah, the more we join forces, the more we collaborate to complement each other and build that culture. And I agree with Osama that we need to have that new culture that is based on trust, based on collaboration, and without having this internalized within the grant-making organizations. We cannot do that externally. We cannot ask our grantees to collaborate if we are not collaborating horizontally with grant-making organizations. I totally agree with the flexibility of these platforms. They don't need to be structured. Sometimes we need structured platforms. What we have within the AFF is very structured and it is very useful. But sometimes we need to have more agile and flexible ways and platforms and working groups, task forces that has a certain purpose, serve its purpose, and then move on. So we need, and the reality on the ground, it keeps moving. We cannot be static. We cannot just sit there, have our strategy, we wait for 3 years or 5 years, and then we can evaluate. Learning has to be going hand in hand with the implementation, with the work. And this is also a message to the grantees or the partners who are working on the ground, that evaluation, data, and learning cannot be a separate program. It's not a separate component. It has to be integrated, designed within the implementation. And this is a trick that I keep telling our partners, that don't write a proposal where you have a separate component for evaluation learning. Because if you do that, your donor will tell you to delete this component and let's focus on the service and the implementation. Integrate that. So don't allow me as a donor to tell you how to split it. Make it a genuine a component within the implementation plan, and adapt and change. And the message for the grantees that we need to be brave enough to listen to our partners and to allow them, to give them the space to change and learn and fail and learn from the mistakes and then move on. If we don't give that kind of a culture of flexibility that is based on trust, I think we'll still we'll keep doing business as usual. Yeah, I will stop here. Yeah.
Thank you, Mona, for taking us from realist to a dreamer with proven steps to move on here and now with the power that we have. And as you said, if Osama asked us to be realist, you asked us to keep moving. So, and also Osama asked us to capitalize on the assets we have of the platforms we already have. So Ghufran, as catalyst platform, how can you help us in, as Osama said, we don't have to have money together, we can have knowledge and ideas together. And as Mona was saying, we need to have learning hand in hand with implementation. So Ghufran and our knowledge body of Sawiris Foundation after that, how can we keep moving? Now we are getting to the end of this gathering, and we have gone through the big ideas, and we have gone into the findings, the great findings of collaboration essence, and then we came with some beautiful output like an ecosystem mapping that can create visibility to everybody, which helps in collaboration. And then we moved into how we can internalize this as foundation and how we can be realist in moving forward. But Mona is telling us we need to keep moving. So how can we start with what we have here and now to reach the big dream? What kind of small steps we can initiate with the current assets to create more knowledge, and shared actions and shared learning with the current resources from now till the next AFF convene.
Thank you, Ayman, Osama, Muna, and everyone. I think this has been a very rich conversation, and I just want to highlight in the chats that you see a lot of people like looking for partners to collaborate with. Like we are looking for someone to collaborate, which is really great and shows that we have the culture of collaborating. It's already there, but we need the platform and we need what encourages this type of culture within. And Osama highlighted that beautifully in how he showed like the culture inside of the organization itself or the foundation itself can help move forward these collaborations. So based on the experience that I have with Catalyst and so far, you know, I'm specifically focusing on the MENA region, but it's a global network. And what we are trying to do is to achieve the SDGs. And what was very fundamental and very essential for achieving the SDGs is systems change and working towards collaboratively. So this has been like the global goal. Like we need to collaborate more. We need to work less in silos and more as groups. So I do have some examples, but I want to first highlight the two things that actually empower this example. So as Muna said, so, you know, like philanthropy and donor organization has the money. Money means power. But what does this mean to or has to do with the culture of implementation when we talk about implementing partner? Is that they can actually shape the culture or shift the focus of these implementing partners instead of focusing on competing. Why do not we focus on collaborating if we shift the funding paradigm? So if we start having these conversations as funder and philanthropy organizations together, and we know like doing this shift is not easy, and philanthropy and donor organizations in the region face a lot of challenges. So having at least first just putting people together, as simple as that, having a Zoom call where we all gather as philanthropy and donor organization, having a common vision, or let's say a common goal that we want to achieve, and just discuss together how we can overcome these challenges and have bigger impact. I'm basing the example or what I'm talking about based on the donor learning group that we have, and it's a donor learning group for global, let's say, philanthropy and foundations. And what they do is they try to know how they can change or shift their funding paradigm in order to achieve systems change and to achieve the SDGs. And we had some of the funders based on these conversations, and it's as simple as just having a regular meeting where they discuss, for example, one topic or some of the couple of topics that face the philanthropy and donor organizations around the world and how we can shift that together. So based on that, some of the funding organizations changed the funding paradigm and how they give funds to match the principles of systems change. So I think we need this very much in the Arab world. We need this in the MENA, because I'm seeing a lot of people in the MENA chapters doing collaborations, but when we reach a point where we want to apply for grants, there is not a lot of options to get a grant for a collaboration. You will find a lot of options for giving a specific organization or a specific initiative, but not a collaboration. So we really need this. The other thing that I wanted to add.
Yeah, Ghufran,
yes.
Just 1 second. Out of the first part of your speech, we need to have meaningful conversation through sort of community of practice, that we come together as practitioners and talk and learn from each other and move forward. So this is the first, to an extent, proposal of tangible way forward. Right, Ghufran?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Next, how we move next.
So the next one is exactly, it's the how. So Adham and Patricia and Heba showed us in the report the importance of data. Data is one part. Research is a great part of knowing and informing our decisions. but I think it's lacking. Unfortunately, we do have the type of research that it's, you know, that it's very much disconnected from the reality somehow, where it's just it resides somewhere in academia or sometimes in our own institutions and not shared. So how we can create this bursting the bubbles, something that I really like to say, which is how can we burst the bubble of how I am being informed? What am I paying attention to? Because we can be very much indulged, or let's say focusing on my own scheme and my own sector and not actually knowing or being attentive to what is happening or what am I contributing to in the whole world. So it's really important to have this platform that can allow these intersections to happen, where I can understand, for example, as a practitioner, I can understand what are the challenges that are faced by the funding organizations. As funding organizations, I can understand what are the implementing partners in certain parts of the world are facing, and how can we work together, listen together. And I think listening is a very essential part on, you know, like if we just have a platform to altruistically listen and not have already set ideas or already set stereotypes about. So I'm going to give a realistic example. So I, as a funding organization, I might come with an already existing idea that this implementing partner is going to ask me for funds. So he will be focused on trying to convincing me instead of just listening to them and knowing what exactly the challenges that they are facing. So we really need this platform that allows for this horizontal, let's say, way of interacting. And also it's not only horizontal, but also allows for changing somehow the power dynamics and understanding the potential of each sector and the potential of each partner.
So this is the second part of this meaningful conversation within a community of practice, that we work on several values that already were captured in the report about trust, about the power, about different things, but we are also want to influence our listening capacities and also our attention. So we are having a very big dream. I'm not sure how realistic this is. Osama will tell us, of influencing the attention of people and the values of people through this kind of community of practice. Right now, my question to all of you, before going to the Q&A, Heba, that will help us at the very end. We are having 3 minutes, and then we'll give another 3 minutes to Heba to answer the Q&A if there is any Q&A questions. Then what? From here, then what? How we can take this forward till the next AFF? What house do we have? What actions? Like Ghufran, then what after this? What kind of call for action we need to have now? So this is to all of us. You can, any of you can intervene and tell us. Patricia, you are moving in the chair, but you are not going to answer, right? Okay.
I can start by suggesting, let's have, so now we have the form and we have the map that it's beautifully done. And I think this can be the starting point where we can call all of these organizations who have already today have contributed and shared their information. Let's have a discussion together. Let's have a first meeting to see how we can move forward and how we can co-create this platform that will allow for collaborations in the future. So just simply, you know, again, putting people together.
Beautiful. So we'll put these values that we were trying to touch base and tell us, send to all of us and say, we need to work on this community of practice to have meaningful conversation, to work on these values, to work forward. So come and discuss together how we can co-create this roadmap of realistic, small, incremental steps with what we have here and now to reach into a milestone with the next AFF conference, right? Adham and Patricia, from a knowledge perspective, would you be able to help us and help the whole MENA region and Arab countries pushing forward, educating us more about knowledge and about the data and about what kind of literature we are having and what kind of how we as organizations can be evidence-based. So can you be part of this call and help along with these values with the knowledge part and the data part?
Definitely, Ayman. Yani, we believe this to the core of our philosophy that data and knowledge is a common public good to be shared with all the community of practice of philanthropy.
So, okay, so we'll count on Sawiris Foundation to help with catalysts to educate us about knowledge and data and how our organization can be more driven to that, and how this kind of movement, as Mona was advising us, of sharing plans can help us in our actions as well. So realistically speaking, as Osama is asking, we will start with these few people that have this appealing idea and start with the structures we are having and sharing knowledge and practice and values. Okay, and we start with a first call to the next meeting. I think that would be very ambitious if the secret thing would be how can we sustain this kind of momentum for a while, this kind of gathering, this kind of sharing knowledge. And I think the more it is a slim and light and rewarding, the more I can join and put more effort, as long as I'm getting network, social capital, visibility, and knowing people, not just a map, but also faces and practitioners, and then start to build a communication and collaboration out of this kind of gathering. So it is an ambitious, Osama, I'm sorry, it is a dreamy, ambitious initiative, and let's see how far it will go. If any of you have any insights before we close, or yes, Mona, and then Hiba will close if there is no more question.
Thank you, Ayman, for wrapping up. Just one quick comment, because we don't want to keep saying that Osama is the realistic. I think what we are aligned. It's we need to have a plan, an incremental steps that leads to a big dream. Without having a big goal towards the end, we cannot even design practical and meaningful steps and plans leading us to that goal. So I think we need both. We need people who can put big goals and big dreams in front of us and design a roadmap for that. And we need the practical people who can build this road towards that end goal. So I think we need both mentalities. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see how we can build on this momentum that has been created last year and all through this year. Yeah. Thank you very much, and I can see you.
Thank you, Mona. Over to you, Osama.
Well, I'm glad we're having this back and forth conversation. We're, as Mona said, we're all aligned here. But for me, I don't think we need to continue talking to each other, because we're like, we don't need to convert the converted, because we all agree in collaboration. As CEOs, as executives, as board members, as leaders of organizations, the problem is not with us. The problem is with the middle management and more frontline workers in our organization. So I would challenge the next step and say, instead of bringing us together, why don't we bring grants officers? It's not the grant making director or general manager of the foundation. It's the grants officer that actually wakes up to call the charity or calls the NGO and asks them to submit the M&E and forces them to fill in another form every day. It's that grant officer that needs to be converted. It's not us. And for me, the next step is, instead of bringing us together, why don't we bring grants officers from across the foundations, our foundation, for them to have conversations, for them to say, that we are ready to learn and adopt this kind of culture, because culture starts from within our organization. It doesn't start with us. We need to convey this message, and we need to make the conversation not be repeated at a senior level, but actually grounded with our frontline staff.
Hiba, I'd like to thank you for bringing these beautiful people. Really, I'm really grateful for you for bringing these beautiful people together. And Osama, I'll challenge you for a little bit. I agree on what you said, but I'll challenge you for a little bit on the tactics. So I agree on the concept. We need to set the stage of the like-minded people. And then, as a realist, you are telling us, again, look at yourself first and your organization before preaching to others. So I totally agree that the first target group would be our people within our organization. Ghufran is asking us to work on our values and attention and listening capabilities, and you are asking us to move from the self-personal to the self-organization. So I think these are beautiful steps from a strategy perspective and theory of change. These are beautiful starting point if we align these steps with an end-in-mind dream, as Mona was saying. So we need an end-in-mind dream, but we need to start to know where to start and with whom. So you are giving us the persona of whom we start with. So we'll set the stage and then bring these people. So I'm really grateful for all these inputs, and I will wait for the coming steps. And I'm so apologetic for the people, the audience, that this session wasn't interactive enough, but I would promise that the coming session would be fully interactive, and it will be a co-creation session that you will be able to drive the change that we are talking about. So with this promise to compensate, I will leave over to Hiba to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I would like to thank foremost the panelists with their amazing ideas, action areas that we will, of course, regroup and think about and come back with these recommendations. But I also want to thank the participants also who shared these really amazing questions. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to them. For Riham Khafagi, he talked about this very important typology of partnerships, government and public sector. Maybe Osama, you can share with us some thoughts after the workshop. But I think we talked about this before in the Future of Philanthropy report. Another amazing question is about social innovation in Zakat. So these are the kind of issues that we also talk about in our convenings, about how to revive religious giving, but kind of to address the complex challenges of today's world. So please stay tuned to our future events. And we will be sharing with you the report, and please do share when we're talking about data, the Arab Philanthropy Survey. That's our way to kind of fill in the data gap. So I really encourage you to share it. It only takes 45 minutes. But otherwise, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. It has been very, very rich discussion that we hope to continue, and that more organizations, more thought leaders like you would join us in this journey of advancing collaboratives and partnerships. Thank you so much.